Good morning, parents. Today is Wednesday, and this math video is actually going to be used for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday this week. It is the same content presented a couple of different ways. So I'm just going to make one video for that that you can reference for the last 3 days of this week. So what your child is going to be working on in the packet is starting on page 169 and going all the way through the end. The focus is 10 more or 10 less than a number. There also will be some skip counting by 2s, by 5s, and then also modeling 1 more and 1 less. So in the packet, it's going to be presented a few different ways. I just want to go over those. Before I start the ways that it's going to be presented, I'm going to kind of jump ahead and tell you where we want them to be. So ideally, by the end of first grade, a student will be able to get a 2-digit number or even a 3-digit number up to 120 and be able to just boom, boom, very quickly tell you 10 more than the number and 10 less. We would like for that to be mental math. And that's where they don't need any other strategy to do it other than just doing it in their brain. But what we're doing right now is building that foundation to get them to that point. So ideally, when they start second grade, if you tell them, I had 64 pencils, I got rid of 10, how many do I have? They should be able to very quickly tell you 54. Or if you say that in the opposite way, I had 64 pencils, I found 10 more, how many do I have? We would want them to very quickly be able to say 74. So the first way, we always try to move from the most concrete model to the most abstract. So I'm going to start with a model using 10s and 1s. Now what's going to be a little difficult is in the classroom, this would have been started with actual base 10 blocks. I have mine, but you guys don't have those at home, so it's not really feasible right now. So we're going to have to do it as a model. So right now we're going to focus on the number 34. And you would start out saying, let's say that I had 34 cupcakes. Can you model that for me? So hopefully by this point, your student is able to model 3 10s, 4 1s. That's what we worked on last week with building those 10s numbers. And then you're going to say, if I gave 10 of those away, or however you want to phrase it, if I ate 10 of them, how many would I have? Now, at this point, we're going to have some kids kind of stuck because they are going to want to take away 10 ones. But we don't have 10 ones over here. So you may actually have some kids who start and count 1, 2, 3, 4 and X those out, and then realize, oh, I don't have enough. They may get stuck. So if that happens and they do that, erase what they did, put those ones back and say, is there any other way that you can take away a 10? Now, you may have to guide them a little bit here at first. This may be a little bit of a process, but what we want them to realize is that this is a 10. Remember, that is always a 10 unit now. We don't count it as 10 ones. Although it has that value, we want them to just recognize that 10 stick and know that it's a 10. So when we are modeling 10 less, I had 34 cupcakes, I ate 10 of them. What we want to get them to is knowing that to model that, you just simply take away 1 10. Now that concept is hard for some kids because when they hear 10, they're still thinking of it as 10 units, 10 ones, but we want them to start thinking of a 10 is a 10. It's just 1 unit. So it's a little hard because they want to take away 10 things, but really they're just taking away a 10. So when we look at this, you can then have them model underneath. We started out with 3 10s, 4 ones. Now we have 2 10s, 4 1s. So 10 less, and then we would have them count, is 10, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. So 24 is 10 less than 34. Now, some important things from this that they're going to need later on in a discussion that you may want to have is what changed when we did that? What changed when we took away 10? And the conversation that we would have in the room is that the 10s changed. That makes sense, right? Because we got rid of a 10. And I know I sound redundant, but in the room we have to keep saying this until they're making that connection. What stayed the same though was the ones, because when we look at this model, we did nothing to the ones. The ones did not change. And that's going to be very important when they get to that mental math. What is 10 less than 34? They need to know it's still going to have a 4 in that ones place. That doesn't change. So that's a conversation that you have to have. And there actually are some questions in the packet that specifically ask them to think about that. So that's the 10 less. Now you're also going to see this worded the other way, and they're going to ask what is 10 more. So in this instance, you may want to make up some type of a question like, I made 34 cupcakes for a party, and then I found out 10 more guests were coming. How many cupcakes do I need? So in this instance, they're still starting with the same model, which is 3 10s, 4 1s, because our base number, or our home number, that's what I call it in the room, is the same. But this time, instead of taking away 10, the problem is asking them to add 10. So what, again, you're going to see some kids do when they add 10 is they're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now you notice the way that I'm lining mine up, making a 10 frame here. That's what we want them to do. Quite honestly, in the classroom, you're going to have it all over the place with first graders. I always like to tell them to keep it neat like this because it's easier to count. If they have it in a big cluster, it's easier to make mistakes. 2, it's harder to recount when we need to find the total. So if they do this, totally cool. They did what they were supposed to do. It's not where we want them to end up though. So if they did this, I wouldn't just say you're wrong. I would say, okay, you modeled it. I see you added 10 more. Do you notice anything over here happening? You kind of want to lead them. Some of them are going to say no, and they're just going to count the total. They're going to say 10, 20, 30, 31, 32, and they're going to count the whole thing to find out that it is 44. Some of them may notice, and we hope they do, may notice that this is a 10. And at this point, you could say, what do we always do when we have 10 ones? We want them to say that they always bundle it. So now when we count this, this is no longer 10 ones. This is a 10. So when we count this now, we have 10, 20, 30, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, which is 10 more. So going back to our cupcake question, if you had made 34 cupcakes and you found out 10 more guests were coming, you would need a total of 44. Now, when they write this, they may write this one of 2 ways. They may still say that it is 3 10s, 14 ones. That's not wrong. It's not the most efficient way to write it, but it's not wrong. What we want them to get to the point is seeing that this is 1, 2, 3, 4 groups of 10. So 4 10s and 4 leftover ones. And this is how we want them to write it. But this, if you look ahead, they do have to know this. In a few weeks, they're going to be showing a 2-digit number in multiple ways. And these 2 ways actually have the same value. And I know that to us, we're looking at that like, why would you ever write it like that? Well, looking ahead to 2nd grade, if they had this math problem, 44 minus 29, which they wouldn't really get to until the end of second grade or mid-second grade, we know that when we subtract the old way, we call it regrouping. And when we regroup, we match it up to this, right? We turn that 44 into 3 10s, 14 1s. So that's a concept that they do need to have. So if your child does it this way, they're not wrong. It's just not the conventional way that we write it. But that they do need to have the knowledge that 3 10s, 14 1s is the same value as 4 10s, 4 1s, because later on in the road, they do use that. We probably, I think, growing up, just learned to do this, but never thought of it as showing that number a different way. Okay, that was a little bit off topic, but I just don't want you to tell them that this is wrong. So looking at this, 10 more is 44. So those are a few ways, or that's one of the ways that they're going to see it, is with a base 10 model. What you'll have next after the base 10 model is doing this on a hundreds chart. Now this goes back to what we talked about earlier with knowing and seeing those patterns on a chart, that when we jump this way, it's a jump of 1, and when we jump up and down, it's a jump of 10. That's all going to come into play right now. So when we're using the hundreds charts, and again, you have this, if you want to have them right on this, if you have any page protectors at home, like those things you use in a binder, you could slip this in a page protector, and then if you have a dry erase marker, they can write right on there and erase it. That's actually what I do in the room. It's very easy. If you don't, they can just write on here. You may just need to get a copy or have a couple for them to use. But this is in the back of your packet. So looking at those same two problems on a hundreds chart, I told you I call this our home number or a base number. I always have them start there. Now, if you presented that same problem this way, I have 34 cookies. I have 34 cupcakes. I ate 10 of them. How many do I have? You're gonna have a lot of kids who start to do this, 1, 2, 3, and they're gonna wanna jump by ones. Again, that's not wrong. It may confuse them because they could jump the wrong way. So what we wanna lead them to is that a jump up is always 10 less. A jump down is always 10 more. So ideally what they're going to be able to do is just know that if they find that base number of 34, 10 less, you just jump straight up. 10 down, or I'm sorry, 10 more, you jump straight down. And again, looking at those patterns, and we talked about this earlier, the ones place does not change within a column, only the tens place does. And then in the classroom, we are always showing this with this so that they are seeing the abstract jump on the hundreds chart with the more concrete visual drawing of this. So those two, we just always make sure that we show them, and again, writing it down here. That way they are seeing it multiple ways, doing it multiple ways. Now, some mistakes that you may see on the hundreds chart, if you present that problem to them, I had 34 cupcakes, I ate 10 of them. They may just jump 1 and say that it's 33. And there's actually going to be a problem in the packet that has 2 people, buzz and boom. We talk about them all year. One always makes a mistake, the other one gets it right, and the kids have to explain it. So in that problem, it might say something like, Buzz says that 24 is 10 less than 34. And then it might say, Boom says 33 is 10 less than 34. And it's going to ask the kids to explain who is right and how they know. Well, they can explain how they know who is right by explaining who is wrong. So they may say, Boom is wrong because he just jumped back 1 instead of jumping up 1. Well, why does that matter? Because a jump this way of 1 is only 1, and a jump up is a jump of 1/10, so it has a different value. So those are all things that you are going to be seeing in there. And you may find that one way works better for your child. Like perhaps they always have to model it, then just let them model it. Maybe this is much faster for them. Just let them do it this way. You're also going to have some kids who do get to the point where they can just do it in their head. That's good. Looking at this, you can kind of present it this way also on the hundreds chart. If you just simply show them 34, a good way to go over this is to erase what would be above it, before it, after it, and below it, because then they are forced to use what they know about 10 less, 10 more, 1 less, 1 more. And that's really what we want them to get out of this. All right, in the packet, there's going to be a few activities that just use these strategies. There's also going to be them counting and skip counting by 2s and 5. They have really done this since kindergarten, have probably counted by 2s and 5 in the room a lot already this year in first grade. So again, you can kind of just go over that counting with them. Some ways I like to do it in the room to get them moving. If we're going to count by 2s, you can always start 2, 4, 6, have them punch. Sometimes we do high knees, and you can count 5, 10, 15, 20, just anything that's getting that repetition in their head. Because that is a skill that we would really like them to have memorized. Like if you tell them count by 5s, we want them to be able to go on their own 5, 10, 15, 20, and just do it. So I like to do that with a lot of movement in the room. Again, the punching, they can do high knees. Sometimes we just sway back and forth. So those are all ways that they can do that skip counting. And then when they see it, it says, 2 more than 30 is, and then they may have to go through the whole thing and go 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and just keep counting until they get it. Or they may just simply look at 30 on their chart and count 2 more. However they need to do it. They can even punch and count that 30, 31, 32. So a lot of different ways that they can get this. With this sheet, which is page 2 in your book, the biggest thing is that they word these very differently. And sometimes it's just a little bit confusing about how the wording is. So you may just have to sit down and help them really pull out what are they asking for. Other than that, there's a cutting activity. If you don't have access to scissors, don't worry about it. This is also copy front to back to save paper, so you may not want to cut that out and just have them do it. However this goes. But the big takeaways from these next 3 days are that we get them to be able to do 10 more and 10 less with multiple different strategies. Again, the modeling with base 10s, using the hundreds chart, and then that they're able to pretty efficiently skip count. All right, again, reach out to your teachers if you need anything. We know this is not easy on you. It's not easy on us. I was quite frustrated before I started today because I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm trying to cram all this into a less than 20-minute video. And it's tough, parents, but we appreciate what you're doing. I have two little ones at home that I'm working with, and it's nothing like being in the room, I can tell you that. So I actually might get a little teary-eyed because I really miss being in the classroom, and I really miss being with the kids. So I'm going to stop before I cry because it's probably going to happen. But just know that, you taking the time to work with your kids at home, and I know it's frustrating. The situation's frustrating for everybody, but we do appreciate you, and we miss the kids terribly. So, all right. Happy Wednesday. Bye.